New era, new cars, and China is miles ahead. That's what it's all about at the Beijing Auto Show 2024. 278 NEV models are on display, with Chinese car makers stealing the show. And foreign car makers are feeling the pinch. German, Japanese, and South Korean giants are teaming up with Chinese partners to catch up with Chinese car makers. So exactly how advanced is China's NEV industry? Will these partnerships with Chinese players all be grits for the mill for foreign automakers? With more trade barriers on Chinese NEVs looming, is the West shooting itself in the foot? Welcome to The Point and Opinion Show, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. I'm pleased to be joined from Shenzhen, southern China, by Xing Lei, co-host of the podcast of China's EVs and More, who's just been to this year's show in Beijing, and from Nanjing, also in southern China, by Zhang Gong, Vice President at the University of International Business and Economics, Israel. We may also be joined by an American guest who has visited this year's Beijing Auto Show. So for now, welcome to the two gentlemen to The Point. I want to go to Xing Lei. You went to the Beijing Auto Show this year. What impressed you most? One model or technology or trend that stayed in your mind? And what sets Beijing's Auto Show apart from its previous editions?
Thank you for having me again, and live to you from Shenzhen. So yes, I was at the Beijing Auto Show for 3 days, the first two press days and the first public day. I'd say Beijing and alternately Shanghai is the only relevant and truly global auto show left in the world. And for me personally, this is kind of a homecoming because I've been in China, in Beijing, covering the industry for 20 years, and the last time I attended was 2018. And I think this year it wasn't any particular model that stood out, but it was truly the global feel kind of after the pandemic, and especially with this new kid on the block, Xiaomi EV, basically getting all the attention and them versus everybody else. That's how I felt like. And the global participation of these global executives, foreign media, I'd say it was probably at least 10x more than Shanghai last year. So it was nice to see this global interaction with these foreign executives and the Chinese executives. There were a lot of that kind of overshadowed some of the new models that were unveiled. But nevertheless, Xiaomi, I think what stood out to me is some of the latest designs of Chinese EVs and foreign EVs for that matter, who are trying to make themselves relevant in the market. So.
Yeah, allow me to follow up here, because Xing Lei, you talk about the only relevant and truly global. You talked about the global factor, of course, but why you say this is the only relevant auto show that you are seeing around the world now?
Well, obviously, China's world's largest auto market is the world's largest NEV market, has been for many years. All the foreign automakers, they more often than not, they sell, China is their number one market. And now China is in the process of becoming a global powerhouse, because we're seeing China EVs and even some of the traditional vehicles entering more markets worldwide. So we're seeing that transition not only from an electrification point of view, but also from China becoming a more global powerhouse for
But this
automotive.
is not an NEV auto show. This is an auto show. Did you see gasoline-powered cars? I mean, or were they too shy, too embarrassed to be among all the latest design NEVs?
To be honest, I don't, because my personal focus was on all the EVs. So to be honest, I don't remember any ICE EVs that stood out. That's how I would put it.
All right, all right. Let me turn to my guest from America, joining me from Detroit on the line by Edward Hightower, who's Managing Director at Motoring Venture LLC. He just got back to the US from the show. Hello, Edward. It's good to have you on the show. So, what did you take away from the show? Why do you go there in the first place? And what was different from the New York Auto Show or other US or European auto shows you may have been to recently?
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me. I hope you could hear me okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
It was a very exciting show. I wouldn't say it's the only relevant show, but it certainly was very exciting. You know, I'm an automotive professional. I lead a consulting firm that works with global automotive companies. I've worked for 3 global OEMs, and I'm the former CEO of an electric vehicle company here in the U.S., Lordstown Motors. And I'm really passionate about the product. And I believe in the transition towards electrification. And it was great to see all the electric vehicles from a variety of manufacturers on display. It was great to see the innovation in design and business models, and how collaboration is moving the transition towards EVs forward. So it was a very exciting show. I did see a few ICE vehicles, but I have to admit I spent most of my time around the EVs.
I was watching some news about the New York Auto Show, and in stark contrast, there was no mention of NEVs in that piece of report, at least. Is that the difference that you observed as well, Edward, when you were watching the auto show in Beijing and the other auto shows in the United States? The different emphasis on ICE vehicles, meaning gas-powered, and NEVs?
Yeah, I think it's a little more mixed. If you look at Chicago or New York or Detroit, you see the portfolios of the other global automakers. They're including their ICE vehicles, they're including their hybrids, and they're including their EVs. Ford is including the Lightning and the Mustang E. GM is including several products from Chevrolet, Cadillac, Buick, and the other brands. And Tesla doesn't seem to be as much at the shows. But the market is a little less mature here in the States in terms of the transition towards EV, as you'll find in China and some other parts of the world. We're about 8% of our market is pure BEV. Compared to much higher in China and other parts of the world. So you see the automakers emphasizing their whole portfolios and not just the EVs.
We'll get back to the market maturity in just a moment. Let me turn to John. In the first quarter of this year, NEV productions and sales in China both jumped by some 30%. That's a very big margin. And NEVs with 1/3 of China's total auto sales in the first quarter of this year. What is driving this trend?
Well, first of all, China definitely stands at the forefront of the entire electrification of the automobile industry around the world, actually. We are not just producing more electric cars than anybody else, we're also exporting more electric cars than anybody else. I think what's driving this, certainly one is the intense market competition. I mean, you go to any country in the world, you probably can count the number of brands by your 2 hands, maybe, 5, 6, or 7 at most, I would say. And a few German car brands, a few American car brands, Japanese car brands. That's about it. Here in China, we're talking about over 50. Some people say even close to 100. So this intense competition among the automakers. These are traditional automakers, ICE car automakers that are transforming into an electric car player, as well as the new, what we call the new forces. A lot of them from the internet space. Latest entry by company by the name Xiaomi. This is what I call the people's car. Sometimes people call it the SU7 is a poor man's Porsche. It's just amazing that you can have a package like this for something around $30,000, right? It's starting at 200,000, a little bit more than 200,000 yuan. So the competition is just intense here. The second thing is, of course, government policy, in my view. I mean, Chinese government has a very strong industrial policy towards moving the industry towards that direction, towards the electrification. I want to point out it's more than just about electrification. It's also about the cars being being smarter, more intelligent, more information technology related applications towards autonomous driving. All these new developments, and those things are combined together. And I think the combination of this is very powerful. I mean, it's entirely transforming the whole industry. And then if the United States keeps resisting this, I would imagine that we're going to see a bifurcation of the automobile market in the world. One is entirely different kind of a car, electric cars, very intelligent cars. On the other hand, you have these old ICE cars with the engine revving up in a roar with some roaring sound, which I guess the American audience, American consumers are so much fixated on.
Yeah.
It's an entirely different direction, man.
Yeah, let's still focus on the Chinese market, at least for the moment. Xinlei, I've seen some videos. I wanted to go there. I haven't been to it because I heard the traffic to get there is just horrendous because so many people want to go there. But is there a hype going on? Because if you look at the media reports on the day-to-day use of NEVs, there are concerns, expressed by Chinese people, by users, for instance, concerns about safety, range anxiety, especially winter. Are those concerns being addressed?
Yes, there are. But, for me, coming back to China, I've just recently drove an EV from Beijing to Shenzhen. That's how I got here in 3 days. And I got to see the kind of the infrastructure, the capabilities of, assisted autonomous driving, and kind of got an understanding of why, EVs are now a thing, because they just work. Simply the answer just work. And but as these volumes add up, you're going to see quality issues, battery fires, they do happen. Also recently about the data security that the Tesla, just kind of passed for them to be able to driven into different compounds. I think those are in progress. And the companies, they're really working hard to address those issues, the battery safety, data security, and whatever needs to be met in terms of the current policy and regulations. I think the car makers, they're working toward that, but I think that there's issues. But the fact of the matter is, I think we have seen that switch flipped, moving toward the EVs. And I don't think we're going back.
Edward, what is your observation on site? How far ahead is China in terms of NEVs? I'm talking about not just the technology, but also the design, the consumer experience, the engine, the charging experience, and the battery.
Well, I think it depends on the particular company you're referring to. I believe Tesla is quite a bit, very much a market leader in this space. They certainly are leading the market here in the U.S. From both a product and a technology standpoint. They also have the most developed charging infrastructure in the U.S. So, most Tesla buyers here do not have concerns about charging because there is such a well-developed supercharging network, and many of those customers charge at home. You also find that it's also regional in the U.S. You look at states like California are further has a much higher penetration of EVs than say even where I live in Michigan. The auto capital here in the States. And but the data suggests that, the data research that I've seen says when customers buy an EV or they make it their primary driver, they don't tend to switch back to ICE. So I believe the market transition will happen at different rates in different parts of the world.
But in terms of, sorry to interrupt, Edward, really, when you were here watching the Chinese NEVs, what do you think Chinese car makers are really ahead of their U.S. counterparts? I'm pressing this, but if you don't think so, it's
Yeah.
fine to
Well,
say that.
what I saw, what I saw was a greater breadth in the portfolio. Okay, I saw more lower cost Chinese Chinese brands of EVs from say like BYD, the Seagull, or the Up crossover. I saw convertibles that you don't necessarily see in our market here in the U.S. The MG Cyberster, supercars like the Yangwang U9, higher performance sedans from Zeekr, electric pickup trucks. You see a few of we have them here in the States, obviously, but more mid-sized pickups from companies like Geely with the Radar. So the portfolios are broader. They're covering more market segments and more price points. But I think the technology is similar from an advancement standpoint, especially when you look at the companies that are doing things like Tesla and some of the other OEMs.
Yeah. Well, John, let me come to you. In terms of technology, maybe the technology for driving per se is not that much of a difference, but price is making a huge difference. Automakers here in the Chinese market have been cutting price, starting with Tesla and BYD with big rebates, and many NEV makers are not breaking even because of the price cuts. Where does this cutthroat competition going to lead to? Are we going to see some Chinese NEV makers going bust this year?
First of all, let me say, about your previous question. Let me address that a little bit. I think, Tesla is a highly, highly vulnerable company. I mean, its technology is definitely at the forefront, especially I think on the autonomous driving side. So I think, and I won't write off American companies. I mean, it's a very innovative economy, and they have great people over there. Now, back to your question about the profitability in the industry. To be honest with you, I totally reject the theory that the entire automobile industry in China in making electric cars not profitable. That's not true at all. I mean, if you look at the largest sellers of electric cars, like BYD, it's making tons of money. And another automobile company that's also selling a lot of electric cars is actually I think it's a Guangzhou Automobile Group. It's also making a lot of electric cars. It's still also making money. Huawei is now starting to make money on its electric cars. So I really don't believe that this business is not viable. It's highly viable, and how can it be not viable when the entire industry is going through a revolution? Tons of opportunities, large enough market, not just in China but around the world. However, I do see industry consolidation moving forward. For those smaller players, especially coming from the ICE space, the traditional ICE car makers, they have a tough time, I think. And some of the more aggressive, smaller startup companies, they might also have some time. So I think just a matter of time that we're going to see industry consolidation. These non-profitable operations will be gobbled up by larger players. It's just a natural progression. I mean, it happened in the solar panel industry in China before, as you alluded to.
Yeah. Well, talking about the solar panel industry, we saw a kind of curve, right? There was a big hype, a lot of production, a lot of brands, and then it kind of quieted down and slowly is coming back, and rationality sets in. I want to go to Xing Lei. What is your take? Can we draw a parallel with the development of new energy vehicles with that of solar panels? Are we going to experience that curve, meaning a lot of players will be disqualified in this cutthroat competition?
Yeah, I define the current market landscape as a bloodbath defined by price cuts, constant price cuts that started at the beginning of last year, and it will continue on toward the end of this year, if not in 2025. So my belief is the past few years of explosive growth in NEVs, I think that's over. But the path toward a 40% take rate, 50% take rate, I think the industry consensus is that 50% is going to happen in 2025. So on that path, what we're seeing is we will see both Chinese and foreign companies, car makers, capitulate. Capitulate is the word that Volkswagen Group used. They had a big presence, and I think in their mind, they are expecting this bloodbath resulting in casualties. And we're already seeing some of that happen for some of the companies. And even, I think, for companies like NIO, Xpeng, Li Auto, I still say to this day, they're not out of the woods yet because the competitive environment and how the product iterates is so much faster, so much cutthroat. And at the end of the day, if you don't make money, it's not going to be sustainable. So I think that's something to watch while the industry is still growing, albeit at a lesser rate.
Edward, do U.S. car makers have similar issues, the the cutthroat competition with good and not so good consequences?
Well, the challenge in the auto industry, whether it's ICE or battery electric vehicles, is how quickly can you get to scale? To be profitable in the automotive industry, and I've spent about more than 30 years in the auto industry, is how do you get to scale? Because there's a significant amount of investment that goes into developing these vehicles. And then when you look at can you best optimize the material cost, the labor cost, the logistics, any trade tariffs, et cetera, how do you best optimize that so that you're taking waste out and delivering to the customer the best value? So we talk a lot about the price cuts, but I believe more the OEMs are sharpening their pencils in terms of how they take cost out of the production of the vehicles, starting with the battery. I mean, the battery is a significant part of the bill of materials of all of these vehicles. And as batteries can be built at higher scale, and there could be greater commonality, the cost can come down. And that's the challenge here, and that's the challenge in the auto industry everywhere in the world.
Well, U.S. auto buyers are reportedly in a bind. They're still kind of adopting a wait-and-see attitude, and Chinese NEVs are not sold in America. What's your take, and where could be the way out to satisfy the needs of those who may want an affordable NEV vehicles to replace the gas guzzlers when gasoline prices are quite high?
Sure. I think one of the things that really defines the U.S. market is choice. U.S. customers love to have choice, whether it's a large vehicle, a small vehicle, a pickup truck, or a crossover. And, the companies that can give them that best the choices that they're looking for at the best value, those are going to be the winners. So that's why eliminating waste and controlling the cost side of the production of vehicles is the key, and that's essential to be able to compete at the price points that U.S. customers will want.
At this moment, though, Chinese NEVs are not sold in the U.S., and Chinese NEVs are forging ahead with innovation, with smarter, cheaper, better, and new energy vehicles. But the United States, for all kinds of reasons, are kind of trying to do it on their own. Do you see the gap widening in the future, and what could be the consequences in all senses, Edward?
When it's interesting. We've certainly seen parallels in the past when markets have been closed, and it just remains to be seen how long that will occur. I mean, the automotive industry is a global industry, and customers travel. They see what's available in markets around the world. No one just stays at home, so. Customers in Asia will see products that are available in North America that they will want, and likewise over time. So, and really from a lean manufacturing principle standpoint, it's best to produce where the local market is. Otherwise, you're adding additional waste and cost that the customer isn't really wanting to pay for from a logistics standpoint. So, as there's greater localization, meaning producing where the customers are, that's probably the best way to achieve every customer having what they want at the best value in their market.
Yeah. Xinlei, is that going to be the solution for both sides, for Chinese companies to sell their cars abroad and for the local customers around the world to benefit from Chinese-made NEVs, that more localization could be the key to the way forward?
Yeah, I think it's a general rule of thumb in the global auto industry, and same for the foreign automakers, Tesla in particular, that the success they've had in Shanghai, and it's only natural for the Chinese NEV makers to, I would say North America is kind of the last frontier, but for the time being, this is an election year. I think some of the Chinese brands they have been preparing. For example, BYD and NIO, they are in the U.S. They have offices there. Quite a few Chinese automakers are in Mexico or selling in Mexico, are planning to produce in Mexico. But again, we're seeing this election year. There could be policy changes of that USMCA agreement. So I think the Chinese, they're holding their breath. They're looking at the situation and make appropriate actions going forward. But I think for the time being, we're seeing the Chinese expanding more toward other parts of the world, including producing, for example, in Brazil, for example, in Spain recently, some of the Chinese automakers.
Right.
So it's only natural.
Yeah. Well, finally, John, are we going to see a growing gap in terms of development of new energy vehicles? Because auto industry is a very important industry. What kind of impact, if we see this kind of gap, what kind of impact will this have on the relationship and the balance of power between China and the G7 countries? Of course, everybody's trying to forge ahead, but China is definitely leading and will not let go.
Well, I see among the G7 countries, the United States is very unique from the European Union countries. In the European Union countries, I think the trend is towards electric cars. It's just a matter of how do we work out the trade friction. How do we facilitate Chinese makers setting up operations in Europe? I think it's a matter of localization issue. United States is a very different story. I don't see any prospect of Chinese cars being sold in the United States in a significant way. I know Geely has his branch Volvo has some maybe a few hundred electric cars being sold in the United States. It's already making a big political issue right now. I don't see the prospect of Chinese electric cars made in Mexico crossing the Rio Grande into the United States. I was about to say that if there's a gap at all between the United States and China, it's mostly in terms of market penetration, not so much in terms of technology. And as I said, it's a very polarized market in California, on the East Coast. People are buying electric cars. We have one of the world's best electric car company in the world. But other parts of the United States are a very different story because of a political reason. People like Donald Trump call electric cars that electric car lunacy, as he called it. I don't see any mega crowds buying electric cars, buying pickup trucks, electric pickup trucks at all anytime soon. There's also the cultural reason, in my view. I mean, a lot of people in the United States, in the Midwest, in the South, for example, they are fixated on the gasoline engine. I mean, they love fiddling with the gasoline engines. It's a very There's also a cultural reason behind this as well.
We have to leave it there. We have to leave it there. Well, only 6% of cars in use in China are NEVs. This is going to take quite some time, not so fast in the words of some people, but it seems that the trend is there. And as Xinlei said, we're not going back. Anyway, many thanks to Edward Hightower joining us from the United States, Xinlei joining us from southern China, and Zhong Gong joining us from Nanjing. With that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Li Xin. Thanks for watching on behalf of the whole team, and you've got the point.